human.
Nacho Leber, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Leber, a Monday regular, thanks to the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, is kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Welcome back to the program. I don't know. I mean, this is a little uncomfortable to say, but I think we should kind of clear the air on it. You know the news about Adam Thielen, and it turns out that being on this program might well be a curse for a lot of people. I hope you don't view it the same way, because we've had, Guardsy and I have added them up, between coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches, and players. We've had no fewer than 7 regulars, maybe 8.
Yeah.
And all of them didn't last. All of them either didn't get re-signed here, left here, we weren't interested in them, or they got fired.
You know the only person that lasted that we had as a weekly regular?
Who?
And it was in 2009, Ben Leber.
Oh, that's a good point.
Ben Leber was the only one that could break the curse. Not only break the curse, he parlays it into now he's on all the time on the fan. Leber's the only one
that
was strong enough to stand up to the bumper-to-bumper curse.
So I think we've already, you don't even have to answer the question. You're fine. You're inoculated. I mean, you're
immunized.
You're immunized. Exactly it. That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I did get it. It's the one shot I don't regret, and it feels really good. Here's the question, though, as you're going through all those, like you're saying, all those people, the assistant coaches, players, they didn't make it one full season.
Well, no, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. They didn't make it.
They weren't very long. We have them for a year, maybe 2.
The guy who had the shortest tenure as a bumper-to-bumper regular was Fred Smoot. And I think Smoot actually lasted like 2 weeks. Smoot lasted 2 weeks as a regular.
Yeah, 1 week longer than Zach Parise.
That's a very good point.
Different reason.
That's a very good point. Parise's 1 week. How long was, the old receiver who also spent time with the Bears?
Bernard Berrien. He was about a year.
I don't think he lasted the whole year, though.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, Bernard Berrien had one of the kind of kookiest, oddest. It wasn't a ritual. It was like it was something that he had to do for his shoes and his feet. Are you guys aware of the new shoes that he wore every day?
No.
So, he was always. It always seemed like he was like he'd come back from like running a go route, and whether he caught it or not, it was always like he was sort of limping when he came back, and I found out that he was always dealing with foot issues. And I don't really know what the injury was per se, but his remedy, and apparently he cleared it through the Nike rep and Nike itself, that he would have a brand new pair of shoes for every practice and game. So he just had boxes and boxes of brand new shoes, and he would literally put on a brand new pair of shoes
every day.
And then he would just donate the shoes to high schools and whatever.
Maybe that was causing the foot problem. Did you ever think of that? Aren't you supposed to break them in a little bit?
That's what I wondered. I usually need some time to get comfortable.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, new shoes, whether any kind of shoes you're talking about, it usually takes me a few days or even weeks where I'm going, okay, these feel pretty good. They feel pretty comfortable. But that's Bernard.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Bernard was also, I do remember there were a few times when Bernard was not on time with us, and there was a couple times he was on time with us and might have been half paying attention half the time. In other words, I could ask him a question and he'd go, now what was that again? And you could hear him like get out of his car, having a conversation with somebody else.
We call that the Dalvin Cook as well.
That's true, during the segment. Yeah, we did run into that with Dalvin, didn't we? That's a very good point, too.
Yeah, well, you know what's funny about that is I will even throw myself under the bus. I remember specifically doing a radio hit just like this with you back in 2009, and I don't know why I thought it would be. My wife was asking me to make dinner or something like that, and we had a Victory Monday, and I was home, and I was just like browning the meat for the spaghetti that we were going to have.
Yes.
and I'm not realizing like how loud the sizzling was going on. And I think at one point in time, you're like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm just kind of cooking dinner. And you're like, like, could you step away from the stove real quick? And I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, I don't know why. It was just a stupid oversight and thinking how much it was actually going to pick up on the phone. I'm like, I still remember that. I'm like, wow.
I don't remember that, but here's how.
So dumb.
Well, here's what's funny. Here's how perhaps I've mellowed in that regard, because I think if you did it now, I'd actually enjoy it. I'd say it adds a little extra atmosphere to the thing. As long as you're still talking to us,
we'd love it now.
We might actually love it. The famous example, Guardsy knows this story, I think, is the legendary Boston Globe pro football columnist Will McDonough. I don't know if you ever knew him or knew of him. Guy was a legend there. Just a big time, NFL national guy, even though he was based in Boston. And on the old Chad and Barreiro show, we used to have him on. So this goes back, obviously, decades and decades. And he's answering questions. He's engaged. He's focused. But we hear splashing in the background.
Huh?
Yes, splashing. And at one point, one of us, it might have been Chad, I don't remember who said, Will, where are you right now? And he said, I'm in the bathtub. He goes, I do a lot of my interviews in the bathtub. And Will McDonough, by the way, he's a big hulking man. He, by the way, once challenged a New England Patriots player to a fight in a locker room and kicked his ass. So he's a big guy.
No.
So there's this just juxtaposition of this great big guy in a bubble bath with a rubber ducky, being interviewed by Chad and Barreiro. Was too good.
Man, big guys take baths too, I guess.
I guess that's the moral of the story, isn't it? You can be a big guy and still enjoy the bath. It's too good, yeah. The name of the player will come to me. He was mad at something he wrote. He challenged McDonough in the locker room, and McDonough slugged him. He knocked him out, which is pretty unusual, as you know, because most sports writers are really not going to be in a position to win those kinds of fights, if you know what I'm saying.
No, and he didn't lose his credential or, like, his access to the locker room?
No, apparently not, because he got attacked. He was basically defending himself.
Raymond Claiborne.
That's
1979.
The guy. Yeah, Raymond Claiborne was a good player.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you should have said the player name. Everybody knows Raymond Claiborne.
That explains it? Yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
He had it coming.
Yeah.
He had it coming. That Claiborne. You got to watch out for him. You know what I really enjoy?
What's that?
And this is why this is just, it's so fun to do these radio hits with you, because, like, you are such a pro at reading the room and understanding that I don't want to talk about anything related to the game.
I was just about to say that.
We're doing such a good job of just, like, tap dancing, filling time. It's still good radio. I think people are still enjoying it, but we don't have to talk about the game if we don't want to.
Well, we're sadly getting very close to the point where for the next several weeks, we might go in other directions, because, as you say, at some point, what's going to be left to say, right? It's all sort of already been said, and I said this early in the show, and I don't know how you feel about it. I'm not as religious about Brosmer as the producer of this show, although I have always liked him. I liked what he did at the University of Minnesota. I thought, he seems like he had a good head on his shoulders, and maybe he's a guy who can have a minute or two. I did not have the imagination to think it could be as bad as it was. I'm not saying I thought Brosmer was going to throw for 300 and 3 touchdowns and the Vikings were going to win, but I got to tell you, I did not think it was going to be that frightening, because it was you were there for it, obviously, another frightening evening or afternoon in Seattle time for a young Minnesota Vikings quarterback.
Is there like a Goldilocks quarterback that we should pick up next? Because, so far it sounds like, we have one quarterback that, he's a slow processor. This is not getting done. And now we have a quarterback that's too much of it. He's an ultra processor. I mean, he's like refined foods these days. He's like ultra processed,
right.
Like he's shelf stable. I get it, but he's ultra processed. And now we got to find somebody that's like just right.
Yes, you're right.
Right in the middle. I don't know if we can find that person.
I don't either.
Maybe it's Wofford.
Well, we do. Well, whatever his name is, yeah. Well, we know this, right? I mean, the head coach all but made it official that McCarthy, all the signs are that he will be able to begin practicing full on Wednesday. And from that point forward, then that means he would start on Sunday against Washington. And he has to, right? I mean, we all kidded, or I certainly was in the group. Well, what if Roseman plays pretty well? Do you wait a week, whatever? Well, there's nothing to stop the Vikings from doing what is the only thing left to do, right? The rest of this season is to keep working with the kid, trying to get some, bit of rhythm going, however you do it, whether you simplify things or whether you actually go the other direction and say, screw it, we're just going to start flinging it, whatever it is. You're out of the playoff race. It's over. So you are liberated in that way. You don't want to be, but you are, to the extent that it's about finding out whether this quarterback can gain any kind of momentum the rest of the way, right? That's the story from this point forward.
Yeah, it really is. And it is sad that we can't take that same narrative and that same approach with other positions. It's like you do sort of use this time where you're not competing for the playoffs. You are sort of looking at 2026 already, and you're like, okay, well, this is the time maybe we start injecting some of these younger players in these other positions. There really isn't anybody out there that we need to start to see if they can blossom into a consistent starter. He's the only guy. And I think the other disappointing thing, too, is whether he was the one that got us in this position or not, he's the guy that you want to have some hope and a building block of for 2026. And I think, sadly, right now, what square are you on? Are you really at square one still?
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping to be, even if we weren't in the playoff race in December, saying like, you know what? We're still, 3 steps ahead of where we thought we were going to be with him. And this is like good information to know for next year. We know what to work on. We know what little things he's got to develop in. And again, it just comes down to reps. At this point, we're in December, and I think we're still at step 1.
Yeah, we are.
And I think that is the most disappointing part.
I firmly believe that, and I don't know if, at any point KOC is going to be willing to reveal this publicly or not. I think that has surprised him as much as anyone. I believe, I'm not saying that he had such hubris that he expected McCarthy was going to walk in and be all pro from the first day. But I honestly believe he thought that he was going to be far enough along from the start where there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs, and he wouldn't have to sort of like start over with sort of rebuilding whatever it is in terms of his footwork, his fundamentals, whatever the case may be. There's no way, and I believe that KOC thought it was going to be this bad even at the beginning for a young quarterback, and every young quarterback needs a minute or two. But don't you think I think he's got to be as gobsmacked by that position that they are in right now with this quarterback as anybody.
Yeah, I think that would be 100% fair for him to think that. I think it's fair for all the fans to think that too. And, we all expected that there was going to be some ups and downs this year. And if you were like to graph this thing, it's going to look, it's going to be some peaks and valleys. And I think, again, the disappointing part is nobody really understood where those valleys and how deep they were going to go. And
yes.
I think where we are right now is I've seen some good stuff out of him. Like I think that compete factor is huge. I think, we heard about all the intangible stuff. Now I think some of it, still needs to be worked on from sort of the mental side of things, but that compete factor, I love that. I think that's 100% a positive from what we've seen out of him. But the valleys are way, way, way below what we expected. And the thing is, we just don't know. We're going week to week, and we're not seeing those valleys sort of like pick up a little bit and start to rise. So again, that's why I said that I feel like we're back at square one. It's unfortunate, but we do have a handful of games left. And maybe this is kind of what he needs. The concussion last week, the realization that the weight is off your shoulders as far as getting this team to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Put all that stuff aside. Just go out there and play football and play as free as you can. Have fun with the game again. Find the love of the game. And maybe through all of that, we do find that spark. We do see that spark. And we do start seeing some of that positivity. And let's stop micromanaging this whole thing. Like the kid's talented. He's got skills. Let's just put him in the best position to hone those skills. And that's my hope for the next 5 games.
The 4th and 1 call and disaster it turned into is obviously a big topic of conversation today. So tell me what you thought at that moment, what you saw from your vantage point, and even what you thought of the decision to try to roll out Brosmer for obviously what's going to be, I guess it was technically a run-pass option, but largely was going to be a pass. What did you make of it? What did you see yesterday?
I kind of suspected that we were going to be passing there. I still didn't love it just because of who the quarterback was,
yep.
Kind of a tough spot that he was in. And, whether it was really 4th and 1, I thought maybe when they set the ball down from where I was standing, that it was actually closer than just 1 yard. I really thought that we would just plunge ahead with, either CJ Ham on a quick fullback dive, which kind of rarely gets stopped, even though it's like one of those things like, hey, they've got 8 or 9 guys in the box. They know it's coming. Well, it's kind of similar to the tush push. Like, it's coming, but you get all you got to do is move 3 feet, if that, to pick up the first down. I thought it'd be a quick hitting, something like that. It wasn't, and it turned out to be a disastrous decision. The play call itself, when you watch it back, it's like, all right, well, Justin Jefferson's open in the end zone. He's kind of streaking across the field. He's open. So if you want to say that the play design was good from that concept, sure. But somebody has to pick up that guy and account for him, and they didn't. And the whole play gets blown up, and he makes a poor decision. So I didn't love it. I didn't love the play call, but the thing is, at that point in time, I do understand what KOC was thinking. We couldn't run the ball worth anything. I mean, I think we had maybe the first carry of the game went for 4 yards, and then everything after that was 1 yard, no yards, minus yards, 1 yard. It's like we couldn't run the football against that front. So it is kind of like, well, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well, part of it, as you said, for me, was also, and I think KOC kind of acknowledged this today, although I frankly, I don't trust him that he's ever learned from it, because we've been here before to varying degrees where he says, I understand, I got to call it differently, I got to do it differently, whatever. And here we are again. And when you factor in who the quarterback is, because whatever he is at this point, whatever strength you think he might have, it ain't boots. It ain't rolling. It's just not. He's not that quick. He's not. And McCarthy, that might make more sense, right? There's a lot of quarterbacks we say that might make more sense. And I just shook my head because, as you say, they hadn't run all that well. But I don't think that can stop you in that situation, because I like the play call that you mentioned. And I even like, okay, you want points, obviously. You don't want to leave you don't want to get out of there without any points at all. But at worst case scenario is they've stopped you and they got to start from their 5. And by the way, our defense is playing a hell of a game. Sam Darnold looks incredibly mortal in this game. So on all levels, what he admitted today is he's got to stop looking at what the tape indicates, like, oh, this is what is going to be open in this situation and should be open. He's got to stop doing that because he doesn't have a team that can execute that well right now, which means to me that's part of how you have to adjust, at least for a week or two as a coach, this and this should be there. But right now, it doesn't. That's irrelevant because we can't execute that stuff. So I got to rethink my process and not get so aroused in a given moment by what I see on tape and just take the little victories. And guess what? If we get enough of those little victories, then maybe I can build back up to doing what I like to do. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. And, he's even mentioned this even just from a quarterbacking standpoint, where he's like, he uses the basketball analogy of, sometimes you just have to see the ball going through the hoop.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're 100% right. And I think when you look at the psychology of all athletes, and really it's not just athletes, it's anybody. Like, everybody wants a small taste of success. And, you can't get that snowball rolling down the hill without starting somewhere, right? So you've got to start small, and you have to build up some momentum, whether that's with the team or just an individual. And maybe those are the moments where, I don't have to out scheme what they're going to do on 4th and 1. Let's just bet on our guys that we can push their guys back 3 feet, and that our guy that's carrying the ball can get us that 1 yard. How about we just do that, regardless if they bring an all-out blitz or they've got this coverage or they got this, and we've scouted all their tendencies. So, yeah, maybe just, feel the game a little bit more and maybe don't rely on all the film study in those moments.
Hop Splash, Sierra Nevada Hop Splash player of the game?
This one's tricky because this player had a great game statistically and really, really did splash. It's not one of those hidden players that just like, oh yeah, did a lot of stuff in the stat books you won't see. I feel like everybody gave the attention to Dallas Turner, and rightfully so. He had an incredible game. But again, Eric Wilson, he's my guy that I think just continues to make a lot of plays, does a lot of things that, again, don't show up in the stat books, even though he had a great game. He had a couple run fits in there where he was bubbling and buckling some of these offensive linemen, and he's not going to get credit for any sort of tackles, but just sort of the melee and the chaos that he creates especially when he's going downhill, it really is impressive, and it's fun to watch just from a pure football standpoint. So I'm going to give my weekly award to E. Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's a very good choice. What's the moral of the Adam Thielen story regarding his return to Minnesota and how it has ended?
I guess the moral is maybe don't always think that the grass is greener. Yeah. And I'm saying that from our standpoint. Maybe the cupboard at wide receiver wasn't as bare as you thought, when you made that move. And maybe the depth, and I know that a lot of things are kind of done in the anticipation of somebody getting injured. And obviously we had the Jordan Addison suspension that we were kind of dealing with as well. So maybe that was like, oh boy, we need to have kind of a backup plan, and maybe he can work his way into that number 3 spot. I guess maybe those situations don't hit the panic button.
Yeah.
Let the season play out a little bit. And I know it was a feel good story and all that stuff, but it didn't work out for whatever reasons. Not there in the meeting rooms, not there on the practice field. Don't understand exactly why he wasn't able to get more reps. I do see though with my own eyes, unfortunately, he didn't necessarily capitalize on some of those opportunities.
Right.
He got opportunities in games and wasn't the most reliable pass catcher, and I don't know really what goes into that either. So I can kind of see and understand both sides of this.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if he's able to land any place. I don't know if Carolina is looking for any depth. He's got some, obviously some equity there, but hard to say. And I think I mentioned this earlier. In fairness to all the Vikings wide receivers, it's kind of hard to evaluate them thoroughly, even the ones in their prime right now, right? Because of what this team is dealing with at the quarterback position. Do we're all looking for, the nonverbal communication of Justin Jefferson. We're all kind of waiting for the nationally, especially. They've already started the clock on, well, are they going to have to trade him? When is he going to demand a trade? Apparently, Randy Moss raised that issue before the game Sunday on the ESPN morning show. So, what are you seeing with Jefferson? Clearly, he's frustrated. I don't know how he couldn't be, but do you think this organization should have some legitimate concerns about him hanging in?
Yeah, I do actually. He's been nothing but an actual pro's pro, since he's been here. But he's not immune to being human, and he's not immune to hearing what people say fans-wise, his own family and friends. I'm sure what some teammates have talked to him about. Everybody wants to leave a legacy, a personal legacy. And if you can do both, have your cake and eat it too, be a Hall of Fame wide receiver and help get your team to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, that's the best of both worlds. But if you don't get the sense that offensively we're in a position to create a Hall of Fame type of production, which also means you're probably not a good enough team to even compete for a Super Bowl, then I think there's a legitimate conversation that he's probably having. And I'm not mad at him for it. I don't hate him for it. I'd be disappointed, and it would suck because I regard him in such high esteem. He's such a good influence in the locker room, such a good influence in the community. And I'm not saying that this is a foregone conclusion by any means, but if you're asking me if he's feeling and he's forecasting what this team looks like and who's throwing the football to him in the next 2 years. And if he decides it's not what I want, I think it'd be hard to push back against that.
I think you're right. Excellent work as always, my friend. Thanks for the time, and we'll chat next week. Thank you, Ben.
All right, man. Sounds good.
That's Nacho Leber. Will you put him on hold for me? I keep forgetting to move the phone to a spot where it's close enough to my headset. Nacho joins us weekly, brought to you by our good friends at the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. We still have a decent amount of show left, and Guardsy is out again. He's got Golden Gopher women's basketball duty tonight. They got another game tonight. So Brett Blakemore is back in that chair the rest of the way. I didn't even ask Guardsy, are we going the distance today? Is it a 6:30 show? Or is it 6:15? I never know these days.
I've got it going the distance.
The distance. Okay, so we got many more Vikings talking points to discuss. Keep the text coming into the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. And we may even broaden some of the discussion regarding some other National Football League developments over the last 24 to 48 hours. And who knows where else we go. But we'll continue with another Vikings, a very juicy Vikings talking point when we come back. People wanted to go ahead and kick the field goal on the 4th and 1. You can defend it on the basis of how low scoring the game was at that point. The fact that the Vikings defense did play a very representative game, probably a game good enough to win, until things got out of hand late. But I go for it and I run. It's just not that difficult, and I would rather do that than kick the 3. I think the least desirable option is to call the play that KOC invariably wants to call, because he wants to flex and he wants to justify what all his work that he plans that's based on what he sees, what kind of defense they're going to be in at a moment like that, which sounds good in theory if you're interested in flexing. But it doesn't sound like a coach who's got a very good handle on the condition of his football team and who he had at quarterback at that moment. It's mind-boggling to me that there's that big of an inability to understand that. Now, could they have been stopped handing the ball off on 4th and 1? Yes. The answer is yes. There's no guarantee they're going to make it on the 4th and 1. It doesn't always happen. But And look, there was a breakdown in terms of the blocking on that play on the roll to the right. You could say, if you're KOC, well, if it's just blocked correctly, then he's got time and the receiver's open. But I'm still going to say, when you factor in who he had out there and his strength is not mobility, I don't even think you come close to calling it, but I'm not surprised that he did. And I will tell you, quite honestly, I will not be surprised if under the same circumstance, no matter what he said today, he did it again. Because in the end, I just don't think he can help himself in that sense. I think it's something that we've talked about for years to varying degrees, and I think we're seeing it play out worse this year because he doesn't have a good enough passing game for people to kind of forget about it. Yeah, but look at that. Did you see that throw for 27 yards? So the notion that suddenly now he has found religion on this subject, I find I'm rather skeptical, rather dubious about that at this point. Let me get to a text also that came in. Haven't heard anything about the receiver's performance. That's Craig, who listens from Boston. It's because I'm not as willing to go as far as a lot of other people regarding the receiver's performance. I'm really not. I do know the Addison ball over the middle earlier was a catch that is makeable. I don't think it was as easy a catch as people are suggesting. And I'll say the same thing I said when McCarthy was throwing inaccurately. In my view, 75% of this is quarterback inaccuracy. Does the offensive, in all honesty, I would say the offensive line there should be more discussion about the line than the wide receivers. But I get what happens. One drop, and we get fixated. Two drops, we lose our minds. And we act like no team ever has had anybody drop a pass over the course of a game. But you can't possibly have watched that game and seen how many inaccurate throws by Brosmer behind people, in front of people, over people's head, and think that that was a wide receiver problem. I don't think it was a wide receiver problem at all compared to a quarterback issue. Now, there was the one pass, TV analyst guy did a good job of saying there was one Brosmer pass over the middle that he said basically shouldn't have been thrown because of the depth of the linebackers. In other words, it made it impossible. The idea of threading it over the first line of defense's head and then in front of the second line of defense was almost going to be impossible for Peyton Manning in his prime, let alone a rookie quarterback who's out there on a road trip playing for the first time in a game that matters. So there's a combination of things, but I didn't buy it when it was with J.J. McCarthy, and I don't buy it with Brosmer either. And, we've got, like I said, there's some McBobos who I'm not surprised at this, but I think they're kind of enjoying the misery from Vikings fans today because they view it as vindication that, you guys all thought the whole world was going to change if you brought Max Brosmer in the game. And we saw the limitations of that particular belief. But we've had one guy earlier who's like, well, you guys aren't ripping Brosmer like you ripped JJ. Well, first of all, I'm going to grade on a tougher curve in general with JJ McCarthy than Max Brosmer. For reasons that I think should be evident, self-evident. I mean, I don't think it should be very difficult to understand why I would expect more from JJ McCarthy than Max Brosmer. But beyond that, we've had no difficulty saying just how hideous a performance it was for Max Brosmer. It was another unprofessional quarterback performance for a team that has had several of them this season. We laid out some of the fancy analytic numbers that suggest that the Vikings, according to one analytic, this season have had two of the worst 9 offensive performances for the Vikings in the last 50 years. 2 of them have both come this year, and the one yesterday topped the list according to this one analytic. It was lapped number 2, which was the first game of the 1984 season. That was, of course, the team infamously coached by Les Steckel, a disastrous one season. That was the only season. His tenure lasted 1 year. That's when Bud Grant came back. Bud had already retired. They brought Bud back for 1 year to stabilize, and then ultimately gave the job at that point to Jerry Burns as well. You'd take JJ on the Packers, wouldn't you? If the Vikings decide
which one?
Well, I guess I should clarify. Justin Jefferson,
number 18. I would. He'd be okay. Be pretty good.
Thanks, Carl. Be a good combination.
No, he's unbelievable.
They would never obviously trade within the division. I in this case, I don't believe. But
no, it would be, if it were to happen, which it won't. Yeah. If it were, it would have to be a Favre situation where he goes to somewhere else and then he comes to Green Bay. But that's not going to happen.
A couple of good texts coming in late. Let's do this. Let's pause here. Let me double check my Vikings talking points list. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4. That should do us quite nicely the rest of the way. And keep the text coming as well. Lots of football conversation today. Don't forget, it's our big annual Toys for Tots appearance at Shields in Eden Prairie tomorrow. We're very much looking forward to that. Now, originally, Josh Metellus was scheduled to join us on location, as he did a year ago. The question is whether he will change his mind on the basis of the bumper-to-bumper curse, which is now, I guess you could say player deeper in that Adam Thielen is gone. And we've now had, I think Guardsy and I have added up 7 players and coaches who've been unable to survive their weekly appearances on the Bumper to Bumper program. Might Metella say, I enjoyed talking to you. I thought it was okay. It's a good cause, but maybe not this year. We will find out when we're on location. We hope you'll come to see us in Eden Prairie tomorrow. Man. Let's get to another Minnesota Vikings talking point. It is worth noting, who had this via X? I don't remember the individual who did. When the Thielen announcement today is not earth-shattering because I don't think, realistically, he was ever going to be a big part of the Vikings' success or failure this year. But it is a good example of how when things turn, you feel like it all turns, right? Because this, at the start of the season, was a feel-good story. You start the season with high hopes coming off 14-3. There's risk involved with the kid quarterback, but the signs out of training camp are at least, relatively positive, and you've added some pieces that allegedly mean you're going to be able to run the ball better and be a little bit more balanced offensively, the whole bit. And with Thielen, we've got to remember, Adam Thielen was one of the best receivers in Minnesota Vikings history. Big-time producer. Out of nowhere, right? No expectation. It's a hell of a story. And the idea that, well, God, what a perfect way to end it. Comes back here for probably one last season. Fills in here and there. Every once in a while, makes a key third down complete, a reception. Maybe helps out when one of the other receivers gets hurt a little bit. And you just like having him around and you feel good about the story. One of our own coming back here. And so when it turns the other way, it turns dramatically. So now that feel-good story looks like, man, could it have ended any worse than it's ending? He doesn't even complete the season. He barely is a factor on the field. He is listed as a healthy scratch for the most recent game. Hell, we thought it was a great victory when I found out that he was going to be our regular. I'm going, okay, he may not be a guy who catches 80 balls this year, but he'll make some catches, and wily veteran theory. He'll just help us get a better understanding of what's going on with this team. But when it goes bad, even the feel-good stories go away. They transform dramatically into the other thing. And now we got people texting, basically hammering him, saying he should give his money back, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, for the record, as he told us, he did take a pay cut. That was the only way actually this deal got done in the first place. So you start the season thinking maybe we can have a lot of nice things. By the end of the season, and even before the end of the season, it's no, in this kind of year, you're 4-8, you're not going to have any nice things. And the Adam Thielen story that felt so good not that long ago now feels awful the way it's ending. He can't like the way it ends. And it sounds as if, based on what the Vikings have said, he asked to be released, hoping that he could end up someplace else. Will he land someplace else? I have no idea. I don't know. I have no clue whether they've got an opening in Carolina where he did have some equity and had some success. I'm not sure. As odd as this sounds, I frankly think the Vikings were also counting on injury at receiver like you count on injury at every other position, where you go, okay, well, of course, the season, he's going to get nicked up. There's going to be a hamstring. There's going to be something that takes place. And then we got a guy we can kind of plug in there. And none of that took place. Maybe you can't go home again. As I think the old cliche is you can go home again. Maybe you can't. Or in his case, it certainly is not ending the way here that he wanted it to end, that his family wanted to end. Remember a week ago, he was just telling us his whole family for the first time went to Green Bay to watch that game. And so their intent was this was going to be kind of an emotional so-long year. We're going to celebrate having a second chance to come back here. And who extolled the virtues, maybe too much, of J.J. McCarthy this whole offseason? And with us, Adam Thielen. Worked with him couple of often in 2 last off seasons, etc. And at least to this point, none of that has worked out particularly well. Let's get to we got, as I mentioned, a bunch of Vikings talking points we have not yet explored. Well, I call this one the ultimate insult. We'll play it and explain it presently.
Only a 4-man rush. Pocket still collapses. And a sack for DeMarcus Lawrence. Making Max Brosmer feel his presence the last couple possessions.
Yeah, I mean, we sound like a broken record, but it's just the ability to rush with 4, and then they've got 7 guys in coverage. You're in 3rd and a mile. You're trying to push the ball past the sticks, and just their ability to generate pressure on the quarterback without adding a 5th or 6th rusher is just very unique in the NFL. And to be honest, I'm a little surprised Seattle didn't take a timeout.
Yeah, they've got all 3.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they didn't take a timeout after that sack. Instead, Minnesota's going to run a ton of time off here.
Under a minute to go, all 3 timeouts for the Seahawks, who have not done anything offensively. The lone touchdown was scored by the defense, and here's Zach Charbonnet, conservatively right up the gut, but gets 9. And the clock continues to wind. Charbonnet powering forward and getting yanked down by Blake Cashman. Spot him right at the marker. 24 seconds, still have not used the timeout. Now they will. This is...
Yeah, so think they sacked Brosmer.
It's like a minute 40.
With like a minute 40, they just took their first timeout with 23 seconds left. They got a chance here to go down, score a touchdown, get the ball back to start the second half, and by the time Minnesota's offense, that hasn't shown they can do a whole lot, possesses the ball again, it could be 20-0, 24-0. So conservative approach, to say the least.
Not an easy field goal attempt from here. Pressure coming from the Vikings, and Harrison Smith this time continues the volleyball match. Unevaded off of the edge right there to just spike it into the ground.
Listen, you're not going to find a bigger Mike McDonald fan than the 2 guys sitting in this booth. I mean, we could go on and on about the job he's done. Call it 2 years here in Seattle, the job he did previously in Baltimore. You have the game, you're at home, a struggling Minnesota offense. You force a sack, you're going to now go into halftime with 2 remaining timeouts, and you're settling for a 56-yard field goal.
From Myers, it is good.
So there you have it. The moral of the story is, you heard it on the play-by-play call and the analysis. That's the stuff that's the deliberate approach that gets coaches barbecued after games. You got the timeouts. Why do you need to save them? They don't carry over to the second half. But I think the reason that the Seahawks played it as conservatively as they did is they were utterly convinced that they weren't going to need any touchdowns in this game. Now, that can be dangerous. That can come back to bite you because all it takes is one play that goes the other way or even something fluky, and then you got a ball game. But it really is kind of a back of the hand to the Vikings' offensive approach, or I guess you could say competence at this point, to have a team go as conservative as they did and say, "We'll just keep kicking field goals." They're not going to score realistically, but they're sure as hell not going to score in double digits. So we just keep getting field goals. We're going to be fine. It was about, there was no effort to say, well, let's try to get 7 now. It was, we're going to go as slow as we can, and then if we get to their 40, we'll kick a 55, 56-yard field goal. We'll be absolutely fine with that. And in the end, you can't argue necessarily with that approach because ultimately it worked for them. Text from Doink out of Highland Park. Doink. Nobody talking about how off the Vikings were on JJ being ready. The fact that they did not play him in preseason over the health risk concerns. Health was the least of the concerns looking back. Yeah, it's easy to say this now, but one would say now JJ McCarthy needs to play in every preseason game. 3 quarters minimum in each of them. Now, again, we all know why teams don't want to take that risk, especially in his case, coming off of an injury, right? You're saying, well, we just cannot take that risk. And they clearly felt they saw enough to convince themselves that he's coming along fine in practice. But if you look back on that in retrospect, can you not say, do we really know how good he looked? Because who are you comparing him to? In all seriousness, I mean, the backup, Sam Howell, the Vikings ultimately were so terrified by, they traded him away and then went out and added Carson Wentz. They may have liked what they saw of Brosmer as a third option, or a guy, maybe one of those guys you keep around the practice squad and see if he develops into something. But there was no real competition in camp, and there was no one else who was wowing. We hear all the time. We heard it. I said this earlier in the show, early in the TV broadcast. What were they saying about Brosmer before it turned bad? Ball didn't even drop practice this week. That's what they're saying out of TCO. It's like, what are you doing? Don't insult people's intelligence with that nonsense. Because it may or may not be true. And even if it's true, we now know it means nothing, right? We know that's just it. The idea that you can get a sense from practice that the ball never touched the ground, that your quarterback's fine to go to Seattle and to be a professional, is preposterous on its face. So stop, I would say, across the board with J.J. McCarthy and with Brosmer and whoever else we might use at the quarterback position the rest of the season. Stop trying to burnish their image. Just go about the business of preparing these guys as well as you can, and then let's just see if you can, piece together 2 or 3 drives. Just make it simple. Go at it pretty much that way as far as I'm concerned. Speaking of Max Brosmer, I call this talking point JJ without the eye black.
It's 4th and 1. Snap. Brosmer rolls out to the right. He's in trouble. He's going to throw the ball up, and it's picked off. Awful decision by Max Brosmer, and this is going to be a defensive touchdown for the Seattle Seahawks. It's Ernest Jones, the 4th, with the first touchdown of his career, and Seattle has taken a 9-0 lead. Max Brosmer, falling to the field, decided to underhand it to absolutely nobody except Ernest Jones, and he's going to go the distance for the first touchdown of the game. Seattle has taken a 9-0 lead. It'll be a pick 6 of right around 85 yards. 19-0 Seattle, a minute 10 and counting to go in the third quarter. 1st and 10 from the Seattle 45. Max Brosmer, play action, straight drop, good protection. Throws over the middle, intercepted. He overthrew Jalen Naylor. And the Seattle Seahawks have picked off Max Brosmer at the 21-yard line. It's Kobe Bryant, 4th year from Cincinnati with his 3rd pick this season. And Seattle has a 19-0 lead and gets the ball. Aaron Jones, questionable to return. Xavier Scott to the left of Brosmer. Goes back to pass. He's going to throw over the middle. It bounces off a Viking and/or Seahawk and is intercepted by Ernest Jones, the 4th, having the day of his life. That's his 2nd interception. 1 went to the end zone. 3 picks for Max Brosmer. And Seattle has turned over the Minnesota Vikings with a 19-0 lead. Brosmer, 2nd and 6 from the Seattle 28, 4-man rush. Brosmer throws to Addison, and it's intercepted by Reek Woolen, and here he comes. 15-20, heads to the right, shakes a tackle of Will Fries at the 30, heads to the center. Now he dropped it, and it's up for grabs at the 37-yard line.
Goodness.
So I mean, I think the Vikings recovered it. Yes, they did. So they're going to have it 1st and 10 from their own 37 in serendipitous fashion.
Wow. You really can't make it up. 4 interceptions. Starting with the one that was the kind of play that, as I told Guardsy earlier and mentioned, that you turn your head away and you wince and you go, my God, that's not professional. How many times could you, in all honesty, say, yell at your TV screen or whisper it? My God, that's not professional. Way too many this season for this club, especially regarding the quarterbacks. Did Carson Wentz ever have his surgery? Because if he did, I think he did. If he did, I think even during his rehab period, he might be a better choice than what we have going on right now at the position. It was, I think, worse than any of us could have imagined. It was worse than I thought it was going to be. Again, I didn't think that Brosmer was going to lead us to victory and throw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. But that decision, under duress, put there, by the way, by his head coach, that play is 100, in my opinion, 100% on the head coach, especially given the lack of mobility of the quarterback you're asking to make a mobile play. But regardless, if the Max Brosmer, the one attraction to him, the one calling card is he doesn't do anything stupid. That was about as lame-brained a decision, a panic decision, as you will see. You end up blindly tossing the ball underhand to avoid the sack. Ain't nothing about that play that says Max Brosmer's cool. He may not have all the physical skills of a lot of the quarterbacks who were drafted, but he's cool as a cucumber, and he knows when you fight for another day. You take the sack, you kick the field goal. Well, actually, they would have to kick the field goal without going for it, but you get my point. It was, and it was in this case only one of 4. I'll have to double check his QBR. Was his QBR? I think his QBR this week had to have been worse than JJ's last week, but we'll double check that. Bottom line is their QBR numbers are so far off the board, so far below pretty much everybody else. They're in of themselves rather historic. It is astonishing that this is what the Minnesota Vikings have been left with in 2025. A season in which they had as possibilities, remember, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, and the bloodied Aaron Rodgers. All at least in the mix, all at least possible. There is a conspiracy theory going around. Have you heard this one? One of the latest conspiracy theories is that secretly the head coach encouraged J.J. McCarthy to not be available, even though he was in concussion protocol, because deep down he might have had a suspicion that as much as many of the nice things he said about Max Brosmer going into the game, that there's a very good chance that he was going to struggle to such a degree that the folks who've been clamoring for Max Brosmer were going to have to return and withdraw to their Brosmer brownstones and very quietly say, I'm sorry I mentioned it, right? Because I think it's fair to say, and this is unfair to evaluate Brosmer forever on the basis of this one game, as nightmarish as it was, but I do think it was a level of performance that even has the most devoted of Brosmer fans saying, okay, well, maybe someday, but not right now. And I sure as hell can't crow about how he's going to show the world the error of the ways of being as patient as the Vikings had been with J.J. McCarthy to this point.
Last week, J.J. McCarthy, QBR.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
16.4.
That's otherworldly bad.
Just wait.
Okay.
Max Brosmer this week.
Yeah.
5.6 QBR.
5.6. Somebody had a stat that if the Vikings on every pass play had just spiked it every time, they still would have had a higher quarterback rating than they did in this game for Max Brosmer.
If you're into the passer rating, it's more similar. JJ last week, 34.2. Max, 32.8.
Yeah, very similar and very bad. We're a long way from where we were supposed to be. 14-3 last year. That didn't end well. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't come away from that game, the single game at least, going, Sam Darnold, man. They did a good job on Darnold. I thought Darnold looked very mortal. I thought he looked a little flustered. Now, he didn't make any huge blunders, although he did get strip sacked once, if I'm not mistaken. But you can't even, if you're a Vikings fan, enjoy that peace of mind and say, well, at least I don't have to hear for a week how we didn't need Sam Darnold. It's hard to spend that much time on that, given the fact that you lost 26-0, got shut out for the first time in forever.
Sam Darnold QBR yesterday?
Yeah.
18.3.
Yeah, that's not very good either.
It's terrible.
No, that's their offense was not. The Vikings defense finally played well enough to win the game on the road. I honestly do believe that. If you have anything going offensively at all, and by doing so also, that would have put a little bit more pressure in the fourth quarter on Sam Darnold. But by the time they ended up getting their touchdown, it was all loosey-goosey, and the game was pretty much over at that point. Top of the hour pause, more NFL conversation, maybe not all of it related to the Vikings. We've got a bonus Vikings talking point that might add insult to injury, even though it does not feature a single Minnesota Viking player or coach.
The Fan and the Vikings are teaming up for Toys for Tots. Join us live, Shields and Eden Prairie, tomorrow, 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. for our annual broadcast presented by Unreal. Bring a toy, spread some joy, and if you're one of the first 50 donors to each show, you'll score a sweet KFAN Unreal Winter Beanie. KFAN.com/toys for all the details. See you tomorrow.
Lots of good text coming in late on kind of a post-mortem Monday. We've had a few of those, right? Vikings have fallen now to 4-8 this season. Is it Washington coming in this week?
Yes, sir.
Do we know if they're going to have their starting quarterback? They were involved in a very dramatic finish in overtime, ultimately losing to the Denver Broncos. I think a game that was played in Washington. Or the Washington area. I've not heard what the status of the QB or what the quarterback situation is for Washington for next week. I mentioned a Vikings talking point that's really not a Vikings talking point at all, but I think is worthy of discussion. In fact, we entered into some of this conversation on Sunday sermons. We call this our bonus BMI talking point. Let's listen.
Good, better, bad. Never let it rest. Good gets better. Better gets better.
Eventually, you heard the voice of Ben Johnson after he had removed his shirt after the Chicago Bears knocked off the Philadelphia Eagles. That was in the visiting locker room in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He, I think, maybe solved the BMI, who's got the best BMI in the division mystery with what he exposed. Why is it apropos today? What's the relevance to the current condition of the Minnesota Vikings? He's a coach who respects the ground game, who relishes the ground game, who doesn't really have to finesse the ground game or explain himself for why he didn't run the ball. He relishes running the ball. Bears ran for almost 300 yards in that game. Now, it's interesting. Even the Ben Johnsons of the world can have some regrets. I think one of the quotes from him after the game was, I probably should have called more running plays than we did. I think the Bears threw 32 passes. And he said, based on how well we were running, that's probably too many. But he's got a proven track record going back to his time with the Lions. And now his first season with the Bears, of believing in the soundness of handing the ball off. You could say, well, their offensive line is better suited to that. Guess what? They had to rebuild their offensive line similar to what the Vikings allegedly did this offseason. And maybe they got people who are a little bit better at the ground game. I'm not sure. But it was a not so subtle reminder of the contrast between here and there regarding the ground game and respecting it and not having to look back and go, yeah, 4th and 1, given the circumstance. Probably should have handed the ball off. By the way, we keep hearing, well, all the Vikings were averaging at that point was 1 yard a game. I don't even know if that's 1 yard a carry. I don't even know if that's true, but that's all you needed was 1 yard. It's 4th and 1. In that situation, you only needed the single yard. And it's the old deal of then you could live to I guess, tell the tale for another series of downs. It's about, Adam Thielen told us as recently as a week ago, before he became a former contributor, weekly contributor to the Bumper to Bumper show. We just need more plays offensively. Whatever we want to do, whatever we want to fashion, whatever identity we want to carve out, we really haven't had a chance to do that because we're not on the field enough. You know how you stay on the field? It's not always throwing 32 yards downfield. It's just getting the 2 yards on 3rd and 2, handing the ball off, pitching it, swinging a pass, wherever you want to do it. It can be pretty simple, but it can be pretty important for sure. Some interesting texts are coming in, including this one. Don't forget, not only did they let Cousins, Darnold, Rodgers, and Daniel Jones walk, but they also passed on Bo Nix in the draft. I don't know what to make of Bo Nix. Denver's record is impressive. I think that team is built largely on defense. Will you look up where Bo Nix ranks, either stat, either the old-fashioned quarterback rating, maybe both, how high up, and also how high up he ranks in terms of the ESPN QBR. Now, remember, this is Nix's second year, right? He played a lot last year. What I will grant is I was certainly in the group that said, ain't nobody liking Bo Nix over J.J. McCarthy in that draft. And what can we say about Nix so far? Well, two things. He's been available, played in a lot of games, and I think it's pretty fair to say he hasn't had the transformational lows that J.J. McCarthy has had in his first season. I don't even think Bo Nix had as much of that a year ago. Where do we have him in the National Football League ratings?
It might not support, although Bo Nix has been solid.
Yeah.
I've got him ranked as 20th.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I say. I don't think, I mean, what I do think is fair to say is he hasn't been hideous the way J.J. McCarthy has been and now Max Brosmer on a consistent basis. He's not, I don't think you can say he's the reason they're in the position they're in this year. I think that has largely to do, as I mentioned earlier, with the defense. So that's one of those second guesses we can argue about forever. And in all honesty, in fairness, the only real evaluation that it's going to take years. It's going to take several years before we can really fairly compare Bo Nix as a quarterback to JJ. The advantage Bo Nix has is, as I said, they were ready to play him almost from the beginning last year. They threw him out there. He got time, and he also stayed relatively healthy, I believe.
Well, they also only have 2 losses. So
that's it.
I mean, they're winning football games.
They're winning football games as well. There's no question about that. Is this story true? The New Jersey home of Eagles offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo was vandalized with eggs early Saturday morning, according to the Morristown Police Department. The incident occurred after the Eagles' 24-15 home loss to the Bears on Friday. I haven't read much or heard much about that. Is that true?
Not sure.
It's not.
Stupid
I mean,
if it is.
Well, it wouldn't strain credulity in Philadelphia, would it? I mean, I don't think it would be. It's the one place where you're more likely to believe that this isn't one of those AI-generated stories and is real than pretty much any other town in America. And by the way, their offense is a mess. But I watched that game, and I thought a lot of it had to do with we were talking about execution, about, accurate throws, receivers helping out. I didn't think there was a lot of that from the Eagles. In fact, I think the Eagles had a lot of opportunities to do better offensively in that game, and the QB didn't even locate, let alone throw to open receivers from time to time as well.
Here's a Bo Nix stat. That's good. He is the leader in the NFL in game-winning drives led by a quarterback.
That's pretty good. You can't argue with that.
Not bad.
No, it's not bad at all, for sure.
He's top 2, or he's tied for first in fourth quarter comebacks.
Okay. It's an important stat.
Hey, when the crunch time is there, he's on.
Well, JJ's had a couple fourth quarter comebacks. One of them was a victory. The other one wasn't his fault, that we didn't handle the kickoff return very well. Is that his fault? Is that McCarthy's fault? Probably not. We still have another Vikings talking point to get to. A couple of other notes around the National Football League and what I think is fast becoming one of the more interesting and unpredictable seasons that we have seen in a while.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
Are we, as a fan base, prepared for what's coming? I mean, we do have some experience with lost seasons that have turned into lame duck situations where by this point you pretty much know you're not a factor for the postseason. I think it probably hurts more right now, coming off 14-3. And with the hope so high on McCarthy that he could be one of those quarterbacks who almost from the beginning would at the very least not get in the way of where this team might be going. I don't know. It's an interesting issue. Somebody's texting that the top 3 teams record-wise right now, the Bears, Broncos, and Patriots, all have quarterbacks from last year's draft. That does hurt probably a little bit. And as we said, all 3 played those quarterbacks extensively in their first year. And so they could get some of the kinks out. They could work out some of the issues. And, I still don't think Caleb Williams is playing great. But it's where the Vikings are further hamstrung. And as we talked about earlier, because they have not been able to start the clock on McCarthy as quick as those teams were able to start those quarterbacks. And sooner or later, the elephant in the room regarding Justin Jefferson is going to rear its head. Because as I mentioned much earlier in this show, if J.J. McCarthy needs as much game experience as it looks like he's going to figure it out, you could make the argument that next year is going to be another sort of a transitional year in which you're not going to see McCarthy at his best. And in the eyes of Justin Jefferson, one of the best receivers in the league, is he going to look at it as, well, that's another year of me in my prime somewhat wasted? And then at some point you say, well, is there even any point in his salary, even knowing how good he is, if we're not going to be able to maximize with him? I don't know. It's one of the many questions moving forward. I think there's going to be a lot of them this offseason. And it does probably in some ways make Sunday easier. It really, though, couldn't have been crueler. We talked about this Sunday, the way it played out before the game. We said, I bet you the ratings are going to be through the roof because the only thing Vikings can hold on to now is the curiosity factor. Let's see, what if this Brosmer's guy's got a little something? And as we said Sunday, if he's got nothing, or in this game at least he's got nothing, it's going to be crueler and even more devastating than it would have been if it had just been J.J. McCarthy going and starting another game. Because there were people starting to work themselves up, especially some Gopher fans, thinking, you might want to watch this guy. He might surprise everybody. We even quoted some of the national folks saying, well, word on the street is he's sneaky good. And he might be sneaky good from the beginning because of that experience. Well, we saw nothing that suggested moxie and experience on one of the worst quarterback decisions and plays and the underhand interception as you'll ever see. Who is the old Tennessee quarterback? Is he still with them? Who is the Tennessee quarterback who routinely... Levis. Remember, he routinely made throws like that. We go, what are you doing? You think you're in your backyard playing flag football? You can't do that. And that was one of those you can't do that moments that, unfortunately, Max Brosmer did. Or is it Brosmer? I don't know. I did hear both. As you said, I hear both a lot, even on the broadcast. Maybe we save... I think we have one Vikings talking point left, but maybe we save it. Let me see if I can find it. Did the bonus? Did the JJ? Yeah, we did. We'll save the point of positivity. Talking point called The Defense Rests for tomorrow's program, which, by the way, as we said again, on location, our annual Toys for Tots event. Come and see us in Eden Prairie at the very fashionable Shields location. Josh Metellus is scheduled to join us on location, at least for now. More on that later. Kevin Seifert is scheduled to come to see us, and Lou Nanny, will join us by phone. When's the Wild's next game? Is it tomorrow night? You're supposed to know this, Kevin.
Soon enough.
Kevin Fallness. You're supposed to know the entire schedule.
Well, of course, because I
were you in for the world premiere, season premiere?
I was
of Beyond the Pond.
It was emotional.
Was it controversial?
Yeah,
okay.
It always is.
That's true.
Well, they had John Mayasich on with Pat Micheletti. Gopher fans go crazy. Next game's tomorrow. The Oilers on the road.
Is KOC relieved that Max played that way? Less controversy. We did talk about this Linwood Township guy, and I think the answer is yes. I mean, I don't think he, could possibly have wanted to endure the agony he did yesterday to his offensive reputation. But I do think, as we talked about earlier, it will, without any question, quiet the bros' oboes. I think even they will say, I'm not giving up on my guy. I still think he's got a chance to turn into something. But it's really going to be kind of foolish for me after that performance to say, you got to keep throwing him out there. I think even they have been neutered enough, chastened enough to say, yeah, you got to put McCarthy back out there and see where this thing goes. It's just it's a set of circumstances at the quarterback position that I don't think any of us could possibly have anticipated. That it could be this bad, this miserable, this dreadful. They didn't score yesterday, right? Was the yardage total? I think it was for like 4 quarters going back to the second half of the previous game. Weren't we like at around like 40 yards or something? I mean, it's just stuff that you just don't even associate with any offense, let alone a KOC offense. Was very unfortunate. Naylor was hurt in training camp. JJ missed from hamstring. Yeah, we're aware of injuries there. We were talking about Thielen earlier, and what I don't think the Vikings counted on was the durability of the wide receivers through the season to this point. It's been the one position where they've had no injuries to speak of once the season began. And I think part of the reason you make the Thielen move is a little depth early with Addison facing suspension. And then guess what? He's going to have some opportunities in and out occasionally because somebody's going to get nicked up. And we at least have a guy who's, contributed in the past, maybe past his prime, but knows the system. He's a pro, knows how to play. And none of that has happened. And Naylor has emerged. He's developed. So I'm not sitting here saying that Thielen should have played a lot more, but I think that's part of what worked against him being successful this year. And I think the quarterback disaster makes it almost impossible to evaluate any of the wide receivers on this team, even those who are much closer to the prime of their career than Adam Thielen is at this point. Thanks, as always, to our good friend Ben Leber, who joined at 4:47 today. Johnny Athletic moved up to 3:30 with Thielen, unfortunately not with us this week, and we've got an APB out for him. If he wants to come on one last time to say goodbye to Vikings fans, he's more than welcome to do so at any point. We do hope that indeed happens, but it did not happen today. A lot of good Vikings talking points, a lot of good texts coming in as well. Monday Night Football on the Fan tonight, is that correct?
That is correct. A little Vikings rewind and then go right into Monday Night Football.
And that's New England versus, is it the Giants?
It is.
Oh, interesting.
Jackson
Speaking of young quarterbacks, we wanted Drake May. And Dart's back as well, concussion guy? Mm-hmm. There you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks indeed for listening. And hopefully we will see you where we will be tomorrow, Shields in Eden Prairie for our big Toys for Tots Day. Please join us then.
Whenever you need me, I'll be there. I'll be around.
Frustrating.